The Falcons have made another veteran signing. We're going to break it all down on today's show as former second-round pick Kevin King, who has not played in the NFL for a handful of seasons, is trying to make a return in Atlanta, and he's not the only veteran player to be signed to the Falcons roster in the last few weeks. But Ari Miroff, by my count, was the first one to report the news, saying the Falcons have signed former Packers cornerback Kevin King, who has been out of football since 2021. Now, before we really get into the weeds on this signing, this is a quick reminder to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're closing in on 21,000 subscribers, trying to get there before the NFL draft, less than 300 away. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do so for constant Falcons updates. But my question after this signing is, do the Falcons own a fucking calendar? I mean, what is going on in Flowery Branch? Not that this is a signing that we have to get all up in arms over, because it's likely just a roster battle over a camp body, but I don't know if Atlanta's got a type on Tinder, but the older, the better. Recent signings made by Atlanta. Eddie Goldman, 30 years old, hasn't played football since 2022, or 2021. Yeah, missed 2022 and 2023. Antonio Hamilton, 31 years old, has actually played football the last few seasons. Kevin King, 28, has not played football since 2021. So I don't really know if Ryan Pace is just bringing his NFC North lore down to Atlanta and is strictly signing guys that he was a GM for or GM against 2 times a season back in the glory days of him in Chicago. But yet another, I wouldn't say head-scratching signing, but not a single player or not a single person in the Falcon circles would have seen a Kevin King signing happening for Atlanta at any point this offseason. But let's get you guys familiar with Kevin King, the former second-round pick by the Packers back in 2017. I got a cough. All right, we just edited out me coughing for 30 seconds. I'm a little under the weather. Kevin King, though, back to him. He played under the current Falcons defensive coordinator, Jimmy Lake, back at Washington. So you got a connection right there, so you can kind of connect the dots to see how this signing got done. And then to add on to it, the last time Kevin King played in the NFL with the Packers in 2021, current Falcons DB coach Jerry Gray was in Green Bay. So a lot of connections between the Packers and his college and the Falcons, leading to Kevin King joining Atlanta. Now, in 2022, he stepped away from football because he had missed so much time due to injuries the last few seasons. That is why he missed all of 2022. And then in 2023, when he was ready to rejoin the league, he unfortunately tore his Achilles training in the month of May. So that's why he's missed the last 2 years, but now he's ready to join the Falcons. So if you're wondering what his Madden rating is, because the last time Atlanta had a bit of a who's this guy signing, someone commented, if I don't know him, I just search him up on Madden to see what his rating is, and that's how I form my opinion, which is also not the worst thing in the world to do for some of these last guys on the roster. 73 overall back in 2021 when he played with Green Bay. Now, his last 4 seasons, you can see, has been unfortunately just littered with injuries, has not played a full season, I think his entire NFL career, going back to 2017. He had a really strong 2019 season, 5 interceptions, 15 pass breakups for the Packers, but then the last 2 years in Green Bay, missed a lot of time. He was also sliding on the depth chart. If you have a Packers friend, ask him about Kevin King. There's not necessarily a glowing opinion that resonates from him, but then again, I don't view this signing as Atlanta feeling like they are satisfied at the cornerback position. I think this is just a camp body, and I'll expand on that later on. But enough of me rambling up here. I want to get everyone watching involved. What is your confidence level in this Falcons defense? Scale it 1 to 10 for me. Personally, I'm at a 4.8. I mean, last year's defense I felt like was a B- defense in the NFL, and that may be even a bit on the, nicer side, if you will. But they lost their top 2 sack leaders in Bud Dupree and Calais Campbell. At least they haven't brought either one of those players back yet. You still have some good pieces, don't get me wrong. Jesse Bates, all-pro player. A.J. Terrell, Pro Bowl caliber player. Nate Landman, Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson. Find a way to get those 3 linebackers on the field all at once. Get Grady Jarrett back from a torn ACL. I mean, there are good things about Atlanta's defense, but the most important part of the defense is getting after the quarterback. And that huge piece of the pie has yet to be filled. So that's why I'm at a 4.8. Now, we're going to have more on this in just a moment. But first, I want to tell everyone about our lovely sponsor, which is Prize Picks. Easy and exciting daily fantasy plus made easy. Because all you have to do at Prize Picks to win big is pick 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. Now, if you're a little, out of the loop on how daily fantasy sports works, I think it's the most fun way to watch a game that maybe you don't have a rooting interest in, because all you do is open up the Prize Picks app, choose more or less on their projected stats, sit back, and now you are locked in on a game. So if you're looking for some extra interest in the Natty tonight, I'm taking the more on a couple of UConn Huskies. Also taking the less on Zach Edey. I feel like Hurley and the Huskies are going to come with a good game plan for Purdue's big. So these are my selections. If you want to ride with me, feel free to download Prize Picks right now. And when you do that, make sure to use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. But download Prize Picks today and use that code CLNS for a $100 deposit match up to 100 bones. All that information in the comments and description. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Atlanta's cornerback room is not in a finished spot. And that's perfectly fine, because that's what the NFL draft is for, rounding out the remaining holes in your roster, right? Curious to see with the new regime, coaching staff, if you will, how they view guys like Clark Phillips and Mike Hughes. Do they think they are legit starting cornerbacks in this league, or are they going to turn to the draft to really satisfy that need? My suspicion is the recent signings of Antonio Hamilton and Kevin King, I think that shows a good amount of confidence in this cornerback room. Otherwise, they probably would have been swinging a little bit bigger at that position. Or they really like someone in the draft that they fully plan on getting. But ultimately, I think this Kevin King signing is a camp body and maybe a favor. Like, maybe Kevin King knows where some of the Jimmy Lake bodies are buried, because he just called up his old DC from his college, his old DB coach from Green Bay, and they were able to land him a gig in Atlanta. Now, I don't think Kevin King is a lock to make the roster. He has unfortunately missed a lot of time due to injuries over the last few seasons, basically his entire NFL career, actually. He's coming off a torn Achilles. So for Kevin King, I think he was afforded an opportunity to compete for a roster spot, but that's all it is, an invitation to compete for a roster spot. So to me, if Kevin King makes this roster, I think it shows that he is maybe back towards the beginning of his NFL career and he's healthy once again. And if he doesn't, it's really no skin off of Atlanta's back. It's not like they have a big investment made in this player. I expect this signing to be the absolute veteran minimum, $1.1 million with little to none guaranteed money. Now, I would still draft a corner in somewhere in the first 3 rounds of this draft. I think 1, cornerback is a cornerstone piece. 2, your best corner is entering a contract year. So if you don't see a long term with him, not a bad idea to start on a replacement plan earlier rather than later. And there are some really good cornerbacks in this draft class. If you look at Mel Kiper's cornerback rankings, he's got Quinyon Mitchell, a player Atlanta brought in for a pre-draft visit, I think. Or maybe I'm mixing that up with someone else. Terrion Arnold, I think I'm mixing that up with someone else. Cooper DeJean, Nate Wiggins, TJ Tampa, Kool-Aid McKinstry, a couple other names to go along with it. For me, if Atlanta decides to go edge or wide receiver in round number 1, I think in round number 2 at pick 43, Kool-Aid McKinstry could very well be in play. This would probably be a little bit more of a best player available approach compared to an absolute pick for need. But Atlanta hasn't done a whole lot to their cornerback room outside of 2 veteran signings that I think Hamilton's got a very good chance of making this roster. I'd be a little surprised if he didn't. Whereas Kevin King, I think, is a favor and a camp body. So Kool-Aid McKinstry, he offers you some flexibility. He could start off at nickel and then maybe graduate to outside corner later on in his career, especially if Atlanta feels comfortable with Clark Phillips at CB2. You could have Kool-Aid McKinstry and D. Alford competing for that nickel position. If they decide to wait on a cornerback in round 3 where they have 2 draft picks, keep in mind, what about the Michigan Wolverine Mike Sainstrel? So Last year for Michigan, he was one of their elite defenders on what was an elite defense. An extremely athletic player, started off at wide receiver, made the change over to cornerback, and it's done him wonders. 44 tackles last year, 6 interceptions, 6 pass breakups. I don't know why teams aren't a little bit higher on him, especially because he offers you some slot flexibility. I think having a good slot corner is extremely important for really good defenses in the NFL, especially when you factor in how many 3 wide receiver looks teams are putting out now compared to even just 5 years ago. You got to have 3 good cornerbacks. You can't just have 2. So if you want to roll with A.J. Terrell, Clark Phillips, and Mike Sandstrill, that could be a really good secondary with A.J. Terrell leading in the charge from the back. Now, what is an underrated need for Atlanta in the draft? Let me know in the comment section. I think cornerback is an underrated need for this team. I'll also toss an offensive tackle. Last year, we saw some evidence of maybe Jake Matthews slowing down a little bit. Not a bad idea to have a good swing tackle plan put in place. So I would toss that in the mix as well. That will do it for us on this edition of Falcons Today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You know, I always appreciate the end of the video crew, so I feel like it's been a week or so since we did the last roll call. Drop an ATL if you're still watching.